This fighting game for the Game Boy Color really has no right to be as good as it is. Published by Capcom in Japan and Sunsoft in the West, Power Quest was developed by Japan System Supply, a team that also seems to go by the name Japan System House. They were responsible for Mega Man 2 on the Game Boy, another game that has absolutely no right to be as good as it is. It seems Japan System and Capcom wanted to cash in on the mecha fighting game RPG craze of the time. What we get is a solid portable fighting game, reminiscent of Street Fighter 2, all in a light RPG wrapper. I'm MrMKL. Let's take a look at the flawed excellence of Power Quest. Released near the end of 1998, Power Quest runs surprisingly well on the aged Game Boy hardware. It sports some pretty nice visuals with a solid frame rate. It also boasts a solid core fighting game design, clearly inspired by Street Fighter 2. Japan System seemed to have learned from a lot of the mistakes of portable fighting games that came before it. The characters and stages are well proportioned, essential information is clearly presented, and input options are varied and responsive. While there are only 2 attack buttons available as opposed to the 6-button layout of Street Fighter style games, Power Quest manages to offer a lot of utility despite this limited button real estate. There are 5 characters and 1 meme to choose from, with their own archetypal fighting game flair, and corresponding motion inputs for special attacks and supers. The game leaves room for some high execution play, but simple good 2D fighter fundamentals will go a really long way here too. The combo system and juggle mechanics offer you room to explore and develop your own style with the character. While movement options are limited, characters are fairly fast to compensate for this. You can try your hand versus the AI in a simple arcade mode where you fight a succession of opponents, or you can challenge your friends via link cable or, far more likely, emulation. But Power Quest also has a story mode, which I believe was intended to be the game's big selling point. Portable games tend to be solo affairs, while fighting games tend to be multiplayer ones. To reconcile this divide, Japan System tapped into the RPG craze and created this story mode as a way to give solo players something to dig into. It's a good idea, but it's marred by a ton of grinding and ultimately too little to do. The story mode casts you as a schoolboy who gets into this model fighter craze, a hobby where you battle competitors in one-on-one fights using these tiny mechs. The conceit of the story mode is that you run around town, beating up randos and their mini-mechs, to take their money, power up your mech by buying new parts, in order to win this upcoming national tournament. There are a couple of different factions running around town who will prove to be rivals or enemies. They'll be a thorn in your side, appearing for story scenes and battles throughout the game. You'll of course eventually meet them at the national tournament for the final confrontation. This all sounds great for a single-player affair in a fighting game, on paper. In practice, the game drags on forever. Your mechs start out underpowered, money is scarce, upgrade parts are very expensive, while fights net you very little money. Some locations around town have stronger opponents who will pay out better if you actually win, but it's a long road to power up for nationals. The town is also very small, leaving you hopping back and forth to the few profitable fight locations. It's a great core concept that was just stretched too thin. The RPG world map and random encounter aspects are pretty basic, and leveling up attacks and stats is a neat idea, but it's fairly superficial. Ultimately, it just takes too long to do too little. I think giving each playable character its own little story mode, each with their own town and unique rivals, would have made the experience far more fulfilling. That could have reduced the need to grind, since you would have had multiple, shorter arcs that would have provided more variety in the story, in the characters, in the art. Something in this vein, but more developed with modern design sensibilities, would be great to see. All told, Power Quest proves to be a really interesting package. The core fighting game is well developed and worth exploring. Despite its flaws, the story mode is an interesting take on single-player fighting game content, and I think it could be the inspiration for a truly engaging modern experience. I'd highly recommend trying out this portable fighter for yourself. Thanks for watching, folks. I'd love to know what your favorite overlooked fighting game is. Let me know in the comments, and I may explore it in a quick hits or a random select video in the future. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you in the bracket.